Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. I'm here today with Riley Killian, who is Manager of Sustainability Services. You focus on green building and energy services, which is kind of taking projects up to the end of design. Mike Dawson, I work on client solutions. I basically provide or look to provide the least burdensome, most cost-effective pathway to meet our clients' needs. A big part of that is what we're going to talk about today, which is green programs. So green programs, obviously, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of nuances. You know, there's various reasons why a client would choose a green program. And we kind of want to give you some advice and guidance about why you should choose a particular program for a particular project or why not. Yeah. So obviously, Riley, right now, there's all sorts going on as far as green goes, you know. So we've had a sustained period of several years where there's been a focus and a drive to increase sustainability and energy efficiency in building new construction and in existing buildings. But right now, we're kind of feeling as though there's a push against that, right? And we, you know, is that a reality, or is there still a place for, you know, green programs?
I think there's always going to be a place for green building programs. But a lot of those jurisdictions, so while federally, maybe things are changing, but a lot of it is we can also just those jurisdictional things that we have in certain cities like Denver, Austin, states like California that are still driving and pushing for those sustainable practices and those green building programs, because they do in fact make a better place to live for people. There are better office spaces for people, better places to work. And in the long run, they're going to be better buildings. They're going to be better built and long-term better.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in my role, obviously, as a team, you know, we're very passionate about sustainability, right?
Yes.
We're kind of sustainability geeks, and we love green programs because of the reasons you outlined, right? They do make buildings better. They do make them better place to work, best place to live. But from a developer perspective and an owner perspective, they're kind of coming at it from a different angle, right? In the most part, not in every case, you know, we have a lot of clients who want to put these programs in place to make sure that they, you know, for quality assurance, right? But in most instances, it's because they either need to do it for financing, or they need to do it jurisdictionally, or, you know, they're looking at getting incentives, or basically they're forced into it, right? For want of a better word, okay? So with the Inflation Reduction Act and the changes to 45L, you know, we saw a big transition with ENERGY STAR. ENERGY STAR became super popular all of a sudden because you could get the 45L tax credit through certification, right? And that kind of, in the last probably 2 years, you know, has been the primary program, right? But now we're sort of seeing a shift again back towards, you know, NGBS, right? So NGBS, we'll start with that one, right? Because it's probably the most developer-friendly green program, right? Just tell us a little bit about that.
For sure. It's definitely going to be, it's one of the most popular ones that we work on every day for a couple of reasons. One, it's fairly affordable in comparison to other green building programs because it follows in line with code and just pushes it a little bit further. So it is going to be the most developer friendly. And then it's also fairly easy to achieve with minimal changes. There's going to be things that you're going to have to change. However, it's going to be pretty minimal, and you can pick and choose what you're willing to spend money on and what you don't want to spend money on, because it's all point-based system. And so our consultants work with you and talk with you about which project, what do you want to spend money on for that specific project. And maybe Houston, you want to spend money on something different than if you're in Denver. And so that's going to allow flexibility. But the other thing is you're going to have someone on-site third-party verification. So you're therefore going to have a much better building. It's going to be built to higher standards because somebody else is coming in and being like, yes, this insulation is installed properly. These systems are installed properly. This is what we're looking for.
They work.
Yes, they work. What a concept. And so it's going to be, you're going to end up having a better building because somebody is coming out and looking at your building and saying, yes, this is correct, or no, actually this needs to be changed. Yeah,
and I mean, you know, the reality is that code kind of dictates that these inspections should be taking place anyway, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay. But, you know, with the green certification, you have to verify it, right? You have to provide evidence. You have to submit the evidence to whoever the certifying entity is. So you know that once you've got that report, what it says in there is accurate. And I think one point about NGBS that you made about how it aligns well with code, from an upfront cost perspective, it's
Minimal.
kind of minimal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and even there's a transition, or there's an upcoming transition to NGBS being based on 2021 IECC, is that right?
Yes. So it'll be later this year. It was just delayed 6 months, but it will be later this year,
Okay.
probably.
And we're seeing, obviously, a lot of jurisdictions adopting 2021 IECC, even 2024 IECC now,
That
which
is
is
now coming
you know,
up.
as if things weren't complicated enough for us. You know, now we've got this whole new code coming
Yep.
into play. But in terms of the program itself, what are the differences between ENERGY STAR and NGBS?
So ENERGY STAR is focusing purely on energy,
Okay.
how to become more energy efficient and reducing that energy bill, essentially, and energy use. Whereas NGBS is going to be more that holistic. So you're looking at landscape, you're looking at civil, you're looking at MEP, all of the above, you're going to be looking at it. And you can also pick and choose on the points on the scorecard of what you want to spend money on and what you don't. Whereas ENERGY STAR, with energy efficiency measures, we can absolutely do some moving around of where we want to spend money and where we don't, but they do have a checklist that we have to be more specific on. You have to do these things, and then you also have to do the energy efficiency measures.
Right. But from a short, medium, and long-term perspective, ENERGY STAR's a fabulous project if you want an energy-efficient building, right?
Exactly. It's going to be lower utility costs, whether it's for you or for your tenants. But more money in people's pocket makes people happy.
Of course. Yeah. And then, you know, you have to maintain a certain, well, you don't have to maintain to keep your certification for ENERGY STAR, right? But you can monitor the energy usage of your building as it ages.
So that's something else that we do. We go in projects every single year, look at their utility usage in each and every single unit, in every clubhouse, common area, all of that. We put it into a system and can tell you how it compares to other projects and buildings in that area.
And I think it's an important point as well for long-term holders. You know, that's a great opportunity
Yeah.
for you to see and understand how your building's performing,
Yeah.
right, as it gets older. You know, like if you've pursued a green program, been certified, had everything in place, theoretically, you're good, right? And you should be
Yeah.
good for a longer period of time than if you hadn't done.
Right, exactly.
But you can continue to monitor that, even if you don't have to. It's
Right.
a great thing to do.
And it's,
you know?
yeah, and I'm somebody that loves data, so I think it's super interesting to like watch how your energy usage, and then you can also pinpoint like, okay, something's wrong with this unit. Let's figure out what's going on. What is it? It's not sealed properly. Like, what is it about these few units that have a significantly higher energy usage than all the other units in the building?
Yeah,
So,
it could be a simple fix, it could be an expensive fix, but at the end of the day, at least you're able to identify it. You know, we
Yeah.
can do an energy audit, we can do retro commissioning, we can do whatever, but we can fix it, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to keep costing you money.
money. And we had a project that they came to us and it had a green building certification, and they had to do the HUD MIP tracking of their energy usage, and their usage was terrible. And so we went and helped them. And
We didn't certify
we
that,
did
right?
not certify that. No, absolutely not.
Okay.
But they'd worked with a couple of other firms trying to figure out what it was on this project that they couldn't figure out why the energy was so bad.
Yeah.
And we went out there and were able to just be like, you don't have great insulation. That was the biggest issue for this specific project, but it made it an easy of like, this is what we can go and fix. We don't have to add all insulation, update all the HVAC, fix all the lighting. We could give them a more direct option.
And I think, you know, that's another important point to talk about is that it does matter who you work with on this
Oh,
type of
absolutely.
project.
Yeah.
Because there's levels of understanding, right? You know, like we're fortunate, we're an engineering company, we're led by engineers. We understand the requirements, we understand why the requirements are in place, and we understand what can be done to remedy the issues, right?
Right, and like being able to go to our MEP teams and be like, hey, this is the issue we're having with this project, and it's a project that they're working on. We can work through it internally, figure out a solution before we even have to go to the client and be like, there's a problem. We find the problem, we discuss the problem, we fix it before even having to go to the client. And it also helps our MEP teams, they know sustainability services, I think more than a lot of other engineering firms, because they have us in-house. And if they have a question, they can be like, hey, I don't understand this HVAC design report. I don't understand how to do this. Can you please help? And so I think that is helpful for us from a sustainability point of view, where we can get help from our MEP teams, but also for our MEP teams, they're able to get help from us.
Yeah, we definitely educate each other, don't
Yeah.
we?
For sure.
You know, we work independently
Yep.
from each other, right? You know, you don't have to have Jordan Scala Sustainability and Jordan Scala MEP working on a project together, right? In a lot of cases, that doesn't happen.
don't.
You know, we're the sustainability consultant on a project and we're working with another MEP firm. Right? That's fine, right? But having one less consultant to work with does streamline things a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. Because we have those conversations, and even like we are working on projects that MEP teams don't understand how to do an HVAC design report, but they don't have a sustainability in-house to like help them. But for the projects that we are working on, our MEP teams just call up one of us and say, hey, really need help with this. I don't understand. Yeah. And so I think it makes it easier on both sides.
Yeah, it does. And we're able to look at things that are coming down the line. Like we talk about, you know, code changes, like the refrigerant changes that came about recently. You know, there was a lot of overlap and discussion between our MEP teams and between us, you know, about what the impact was going to be, how it was going to affect things.
Yeah.
So it's great that we're able to sort of look ahead and come up with solutions before we have to.
Yeah, and like
right?
2024 IACC, it's coming. We have jurisdictions adopting it currently.
Yeah.
And so we have people in-house that are helping us understand what's going to happen in both for the MEP side and for sustainability. And I think that that's very helpful.
Yeah. And aside from the understanding of the requirements, aside from having that engineering expertise, I think there are verifiers and there are verifiers.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? You know, so there are people that, you know, will say, yeah, okay, this is fine. The example in case that you brought up before where it was certified, everything was good, but in a very, very short period of time, that was found not to be the case. So, you know, there are lots of consultants out there that are great. You know, we're not the only ones, and we're not trying to say that, you know, you should use us because we're the only people that, but the point I'm making is, you know, to our clients that just kind of vet who you're working with on the kind of project, because it makes a massive, massive difference.
Oh, for
right?
sure. And especially if you're not vetting it and then you don't end up having a good building, then you didn't get the benefit that you were hoping for.
You're not getting the value out of it. So moving away from multifamily well, not completely moving away from multifamily, but let's talk a little bit about LEED. Like LEED is still, I think LEED is still the sort of most certified program in the US. And there are multifamily programs with LEED, right? But it's not really the best option for multifamily, is it?
It's not the most cost friendly, I would say. It's going to be one of the more expensive programs. And it is scorecard based, but it is more difficult to achieve. It's a great option that we use a lot for distribution and warehouses because they have programs for core and shell and for warehouses, which makes a big difference because NGBS does not. So that's not an option. So we do a lot of LEED projects for that. For distribution centers, there's going to be less that we're going to have to turn in for submittals and verification and all of those things into LEED. And so it's harder because there's fewer points that you can go for, but it's also easier because there's less components to your building. So it's a lot of documentation for LEED. And so for multifamily projects, we're working on a multifamily project right now. It's just it's more documentation.
And it's more burdensome on the client,
It's
right?
more burdensome on the client and like whoever's having to send us all those submittals to like go through, and then we go and look for all the different documentation that go with that submittal, and then we turn it into LEED.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more documentation based. But the bright side about LEED is you can pick and choose what you want to spend money on. We can tell you what the low hanging fruit is. We can be like, these are going to be the easy points for you to achieve, but they're not necessarily the ones you have to go to. If you'd rather go to these other ones, let's do it. Yeah. Whatever works best for your project.
And I think that's the overall point. You know, the overriding factor is that you choose the program that suits your project the best, right? Like we don't have a dog in the fight. We're not advocating for one program over another, right? We realize and understand that NGBS works on this project, an identical project in the same city might not work the same way depending on what your base design starts at, right?
Right. And what the owner and developer is looking for. Like, are they going to be a long-term holder in the project? Are they building it and then going to try to sell it in a year? There's different things that the owner and developers want.
Yeah.
And so each project's going to be different, and we have to tailor each consulting to that type of project.
I have a lot of those conversations where, you know, a client reaches out specifically about program A, right? And then I'll say, okay, fine. I'll go away, I'll look at the project, and I'll come back and say, you know, this might also work for you. You know, it might be more expensive in this area, but based on everything, you know, you might be better looking at this. So that's the point of these green programs is there are so many of them, and there are so many of them, right? Some are better than others. None of them are probably perfect, you know, because at the end of the day, I'm sure they would love to go further, all of them.
Exactly.
Right, you know, but they can't. You know, they've got to take into account what owners and developers are going to be prepared to do.
And willing to do.
Yeah, same with code,
Yep.
you know. So you've got to do things in steps, right?
Yep.
And I think that if we can just continue to give clients all of the options, right, and help them to sort of, you know, decide, right, okay, if I'm going to do this, you know, 45-story high-rise or whatever, then I'm not going to do Energy Star because it's going to cost me an absolute fortune. The building would be amazing.
It would be amazing.
But it's going to save them a fortune, right? But it's just not practical. It's just going to be too expensive to implement everything, which is why we've got, you know, LEED, things like that.
Exactly.
So, and then just going back to like state and jurisdictional stuff, there is an overlap, right,
Yes.
between what code requires and what a green program requires, right? And although it could be an added expense to put a green program in, the benefits that you could get from that, because of the overlap, it really reduces the delta to pursue, doesn't it?
Exactly. So like if you're in a place that is 2021 IACC and it requires the testing, then the delta for Energy Star, not that big, because you're already going to have to be out there for that testing. And so you might as well get Energy Star because you do the design, not a crazy fee, and then you do the testing and verification, which is not that much more above code because you already have to get that testing done. So I would say the green building programs, they are able to be based on the code, but then just take you a little step further. And so they end up having better buildings.
And there's a lot of jurisdictions that will allow you to choose a green program and get certified in that to comply with their requirements as well.
Yeah, exactly. So like in AEGB, is a green building program in Austin that you then have a better building for green building because they want those green building certifications in Austin for what they're building. Like that's something that's important to the city. And then in places like Houston, you can also get utility incentives. If you do these above code programs, you end up getting quite a bit of money for doing different practices, whether it's adding different HVAC systems, windows, lightings, whatever it might be. Each program's a little bit different, but you're able to get an incentive back from your city as well, in a lot of cities. So.
And I think you mentioned Houston there. You know, a great example of that is the center point program. Right?
Yep.
So you can. So basically, for doing nothing extra, right? If you're pursuing ENERGY STAR or NGBS and it's a HUD project and you've got to do an energy model and you've got to do the testing, you've got to do the verification, your center point incentive is what, like $250 or more a unit average, depending on
what the things you do.
What you put in there, yeah. So, and center point's not the only one. You know, there's lots of them everywhere. It's one of the better ones.
Yeah,
right?
And it's the one that we've done a lot of work with. And so I have a lot of experience with that project, but it's not, there's some in Oregon, there's some in, like, they're all over.
Yeah.
You just have to be working with somebody that knows that those incentives exist, so they can help you get those incentives. Because a lot of times they need that verification from somebody, a third party, which JSC can fill that role.
Yeah, you've got to explore what options are available to you. Not just from utility providers, but there's tax breaks that cities offer and things like that as well. There's all kinds of stuff out there, isn't there?
Oh,
it's kind of hidden away. You know, like we have a hard time trying to find it most of the time.
When we're actively looking for it, yes.
Right? But it's there. And the message is that make sure you either look yourself, right, when you're designing your project, or you speak to your consultant and say, hey, what else can you get for us?
Yeah.
So, like I say, all of this is free, effectively.
Yeah.
Right? You're already doing it, and you're getting paid for it. So I kind of get frustrated at the perception that, well, let's do an energy model if ComCheck or ResCheck fails, right? And because people see energy modeling as an expense, an additional expense. We don't have to do that if we don't have to spend that money. And by the way, it's not a great deal of money, you know, to do an energy model. But the perception is that, well, we'll only do it if we have to. But there's a ton of benefits to just doing an energy model anyway,
yeah.
right?
You can, and with like a ResCheck and ComCheck, there's certain requirements that you have to meet. Whereas with an energy model, you can do trade-offs. So like, if you don't want to do slab insulation, you'd rather have better windows or whatever it might be, we can do those trade-offs in an energy model. You tell us, you're like, what do you not want to do? What are you willing to do?
Yeah.
And we can put that into our software and help you figure out a solution and path forward, which can end up saving you more money down the line because you're going to have a better built, energy efficient building.
And that's the thing, like, instead of looking at it as an expense, right, then it can be a benefit. It can save you money on the project.
Yeah, you have to look at it more long term. And while some owners and developers, like, they're not planning to keep those buildings long term. But just like with green building programs, there's benefits to having those when you're going to sell and, like, when you're trying to get tenants and when you're trying to do all of those things, because better buildings, more efficient, utility bills are a big thing.
Yeah, they are.
And so if there's anything you can do to reduce those, that's like a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's something else that's overlooked. I mean, again, right at the beginning, I said that we are pro green program,
building.
we're pro sustainability
Yes.
for the reason that it's factually correct that green certified buildings are better buildings, right? Like, there's all kinds of deniability about, you know, climate change and one thing and another, and people have different opinions on alternative power sources and carbon emissions and everything else. It's a huge, complicated subject, right?
Yes.
But the work that we do, right, the analysis that we do through modelling, the verification that we do through, you know, visually going out there and checking. And then testing envelopes and, you know, testing ducts and things like that, it shows clearly that it's better if it's done this way.
Properly, yeah.
Right?
And
So,
like installation, that's like one of the things that we look at when we're going out and verifying, making sure that it's installed properly and not just like thrown into the wall
yeah.
with no purpose.
Yeah.
Like, that is a big deal. And then you're not using too much insulation and, like, with overlaps and different things like that, which A, cost you more money.
Yeah.
But B, it's less efficient.
Yeah.
So the utilities are going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
And so I think it's that long-term look at what you're actually building for longevity of the building in general.
Yeah, and again, that's something that we all have a responsibility to produce better, more efficient buildings for people to live in, right? Whether you're going to build it and sell it, right, or you're going to build it and keep it for 30 years or whatever, right? The bottom line is that we have to be focused on a more sustainable future, right? Like, I was reading a report this morning and it said that the most inefficient or the biggest waste of energy is still HVAC, right? We're not going to get into climate change and things like that, you know, but the reality is that we've had a successive run of the hottest years, right? And that's meaning that HVAC systems are being used more, which is using more energy.
Right, exactly.
That's a fact, you know.
Means your utility bills are going up.
Exactly, you know. So, and I think from a marketability, like, this is in the news all the time now, right? It's like, you know, it's a very, very commonly discussed topic, right? So even people that wouldn't know LEED from NGBS from energy, like, they don't know what it means, right? If something has a green certificate, if something, you mentioned sustainability, right? You know, this building has been designed and built to whatever green standard, right?
Yeah.
From a marketability perspective, people recognize that, don't they?
Oh, for sure. And, like, there's people, like, when I'm explaining what I do for a living, everyone has heard of LEED. Everyone has heard of ENERGY STAR. They're not uncommon names. You see ENERGY STAR when you buy an appliance.
Yeah.
Like, we have ENERGY STAR appliances,
Yeah.
and you can also have an ENERGY STAR building.
Yeah. Well, and that's a very, very good point. You know, person is going to buy an ENERGY STAR fridge as opposed to a not ENERGY STAR fridge because they know
It's more energy efficient.
it's going to save them money, right? So why would they not do the same when they're renting an apartment?
Exactly.
You know, like, it makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
So
And
there's marketability to it. I know that there's, you know, some skepticism. I don't know if there's actually any facts out there to back this up, right? In terms of X amount more ENERGY STAR units are rented per year than not, right? Because it all comes down to availability and everything else, doesn't it? You know, but we know for sure that people recognize it, people understand it, and people want it.
they're healthier to live in. You're getting fresh air, which is incredible. You're getting well-sealed apartments and my dad always said growing up, please don't AC the outside.
Yeah.
And so but that is a lot of old houses. Like if you go through the old houses, you can feel the
Don't even, honestly, I bought a house, well, we bought a house
Yeah.
last year. It's like it was built in, the 70s or whatever. And it's lovely, but I kind of hate knowing what I know now.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm walking around it and I'm like, okay, that needs to change, that needs to change, and it's a fact, as I say. There's no denying that, proper insulation, well-sealed ducts, a good envelope, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It works, it makes it more efficient, and it does save you a fortune.
Yeah.
In the long term.
I actually live in a passive house, and so which is an insane certification that it's what a lot of people would do for a very high-end building. Like it's going to be their showcase building.
Yeah.
But they're really cool projects, and the energy efficiency and the ceiling of the project, I am amazed at how much I'm like, oh, I am very sealed in this room. But then I'm also getting that fresh air that's coming through. So it's not like getting stuffy or anything like that, but it is a very cool, you get into these buildings, and once you start to think about it, you're like, oh, this is actually really cool what I'm in.
Yeah, it's like a living thing, isn't it?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm also being a part of making the world a little bit better, a little bit healthier for 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Because if we have to take those buildings that are trying to be rehabbed to have less energy efficiency, most of the time, it's just cheaper and more affordable to tear them down. And if we just keep tearing buildings down, just so much waste.
Yeah, I mean you've got Denver, you're from Denver, I'm from Atlanta, right? And in both of those cities, there's a push, isn't there, to reduce the amount of carbon emissions, right? And most of it is coming from old commercial property, right? And obviously, as you say, you can't just turn around and say, well, okay, we'll gut them and we'll turn them into multi-family buildings, because there's still a housing shortage, right?
Yep.
Because when you actually look into what's involved in the demo on that, it's insane what they're going to have to do. So they're just knocking them down and starting again. So if we build them right in the first place,
then we don't have to do that.
Yeah, 50 years from now, right, we're not going to have this problem,
Yeah, exactly.
So while we're talking about green programs and what's the best fit, right, if you don't have to do a green program, you don't want to do a green program, right? But you do care about the standard of the building that you're designing, we can make a bespoke program.
Yep, absolutely. We can help you figure out what you want to do, what are the big things that are important to you, and at your project, and we can tailor it around that. So if you really want an energy model, you really want commissioning, somebody to come verify, third-party verification, and tell you, yes, this insulation is looking good, yes, we're doing blower door testing, checking the leakage, like all of those things, we can do that. There's a lot of different options.
And would it help you in the design process if you said, right, okay, this is going to be our standard, right? From now on, everything that we build, right, we're going to have this for QA, right? We're going to use a little bit of LEED, a little bit of ENERGY STAR, a little bit of NGBS, a little bit of whatever, right? Like you said, pick and choose your credits, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And okay, you're not going to get a certification at the end of it. You're not necessarily going to benefit from it from an incentives or deductions perspective or whatever, right? But you are going to know that, hey, it's a good product.
Well, and you could still be getting incentives from your local utility. Like if they're someone like if you're doing this in Houston, I'm going back to that one because I know the Centerpoint program really well. There's still things you can get money for on that. And so just because you're not doing a traditional green building program doesn't mean that there's not programs out there that help with funding for heat pumps or funding for better windows or whatever it might be. And so there's always options.
Yeah, and you can get, a lot of these incentives that local providers offer. It's not just for new construction, is it? It's also for improvements.
Oh, yeah. Because, for example, in Denver right now, one of the big things is they're trying to reduce the energy use intensity in all commercial buildings. You can see all of the energy use intensity. There's maps. They're working on it very hard. It's a very big push in Denver right now. And so they are doing incentives for doing ASHRAE audits, which is going in, there's different levels, so it depends on which level you do, but going out and having someone come and look at your building and tell you where you can improve efficiencies. There's also incentives for heat pumps and all of putting those into your buildings for when you're trying to get that better energy use.
Right.
And so there are options, but you have to be you have to be looking for them. They're not going to come and knock on your door.
No, and you can also get certified for making improvements to an existing building as well, right?
Yeah, so there's existing building certifications. There's a couple of different options, and it kind of really depends on the type of building. What would be the best option for specific projects? Because there's some that don't offer existing building, but then there's others that do. And so it's talking to an expert on what would be best for your building and what you're trying to do for your building.
Yeah, because you've got like BREEAM in use, right?
Yep.
You've got LEED for buildings. You've got ENERGY STAR for buildings, I think, or something like that.
There is one, yep.
So, and again, it doesn't necessarily gain you anything, right, from a financial perspective or whatever. But if you're going to make those improvements, why not, get something to tell the world that, hey, we've done this.
We did it.
Because otherwise, how's anybody going to know?
Right, exactly.
And that's the other thing as well about, from a financial perspective, investors, they are focusing more on knowing that they've got value for money, right? So if you're building a new high-rise or a small multifamily or a single-family project or whatever, investors want to know that they're getting value for money, right? They want to know that their money's being spent correctly or whatever. So whilst there's kind of it feels like there's a trend away from sustainability and green building, right? From a financial perspective, the focus seems to be more and more on that.
It's still a big deal, and they're still asking for these things, and you have your local jurisdictions that are pushing it, and so things can happen federally every single day. They do, but in local jurisdictions, they're going to continue to move forward, and I genuinely think that is happening.
Yeah.
We're seeing it happen, and there's just like some jurisdictions that they're not going to move backwards. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Again, we have to be aware that there's that. We're looking at it from a sustainability perspective, and then you owners and developers looking at it from a cost perspective, right?
Right.
But the bottom line is that everything that we talked about today in relation to green programs, there's a place for them, right? There's always going to be a place for them, right? There's always going to be progress, right? As you said, there's not going to be a reduction in the push on energy use or sustainability, right? It has to continue, right?
And once you adopt one energy code, you're not going to go, I'm going to go back to 2009 IECC. Like that, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But you're going to see jurisdictions going into 2024 IECC.
And we're already seeing that.
We're already seeing it. And so you just have to be prepared for it. And so why not do a green building program? Why not add it on to your project? The delta is becoming smaller, especially as different jurisdictions are requiring that testing requirement. So the delta does get smaller for things like ENERGY STAR. And so why not? Yeah. What is the downside?
Yeah, so I think, in summary, we know that they're here to stay, right? The science isn't going to go away, nothing's going to change. There's going to have to be a continued push for sustainability in new construction, and in existing buildings, we're going to have to reduce our energy usage. We can't continue going the way we are. There is a lot of uncertainty and a lot of kind of fear at the moment around, what's going to happen. Is it worth me doing this? Are they going to take it away from me at the end? Is it going to be worth it in 2 years or whatever? But that's what we're here for, right? Us and, other consultants like that. We want to guide you, least burdensome, most cost-effective pathway, not just to green programs, but to sustainability in general. Just talk to us, talk to us and other consultants, find out what you can potentially gain from getting green certification. And I think you might be surprised, So anyway, that about wraps everything up for today, doesn't it? So we hope to see you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.